donate.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Okay, so the topic that we have for today, it's called Before You Criticize. Now, I have spoken a little bit about this topic before as well, but especially I think this topic is even more relevant, even more important right now, because we're living in the call-out culture, right? So because of everything, because of the internet, because of social media, it's very easy to criticize people and call out people online. And also, I think even associated with that is what some of you may know as the cancel culture. Well, people get canceled. Basically, you're just like rejecting someone completely. They should, their life should be destroyed. Like they shouldn't be online, or they shouldn't have any public say on any matter. Now, when it comes to these issues, obviously our goal as believers, as Muslims, is to be just and is to make sure that everything that we do is good, is upright, it is in line with the Quran and the Sunnah, it is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And sometimes that means following the trends, following what is happening, and sometimes it means going against the trends. Sometimes it means not following what has become common, what has become popular. And so that is why knowledge is so very, very important. And that is why I hope today's lecture, this talk, will serve as kind of a guideline for us before we ever think about speaking out on a matter, specifically when it comes to individuals. Because the biggest thing, one of the biggest issues here is when we criticize someone or we speak out against them, we call them out, we're dealing with the honor of an individual. We're dealing with the reputation, the honor of a believer. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his farewell khutbah during the farewell Hajj, one of the things that he emphasized is how sacred the honor of a believer is. He said certainly, of this day, and he was standing on the day of Arafah, on the Mount of Arafah. He said certainly the blood and the honor of your brother, right, and blood being obviously life and safety, is haramun alaykum. It is basically sacred for you, just like the sanctity of this day, meaning the day of Arafah, just like the sanctity of the place that we are in. So as believers, when we think about the day of Arafah, it is sacred for us. Like we understand that it's part of our deen. The Mount of Arafah, the plain of Arafah, when we are there, those of you who've had the chance to visit, those of you who had the chance to make Hajj, and standing there on Arafah, you feel the sanctity, the sacred nature of that place. So that is why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, just like you feel how sacred this place is, this day is, likewise, the honor, the blood and the honor of your brother is sacred for you. And this is a warning from the Prophet ﷺ that we should be very, very careful when it comes to saying anything that would hurt the reputation or the honor of someone. And that is why these matters are so very, very important. Now, when it comes to criticizing someone or talking about someone, in actuality, there are two things that we keep in mind, right? Or two, I should say, when we think about criticizing someone, it's pretty much two avenues that we may take. Either we say, we are advising someone, we're giving someone advice. Or we say that, we are commanding the good and forbidding the evil. Now, let me deal with commanding the good and forbidding the evil first and foremost. Now, commanding the good and forbidding the evil, definitely 100%. This is part of our deen, right? This is part of not only is it part of our iman. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said in authentic hadith mentioned in Sunan at-Tirmidhi, he said, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِي لَتَأْمُرُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. He said, I swear by the one in whose hand is my soul, that you will command the good or enjoin that which is good, and you will put an end to evil or forbid evil, or Allah will send down upon you a punishment. And when this punishment comes, people will call upon Allah, and Allah will not respond to you. Now, this is a very dangerous, subhanAllah, a very scary hadith. Because here the Prophet is saying one of the reasons why our dua might not be responded to is because we are not enjoining that which is good. We are not, we are not condemning, or we should say, we are not speaking out against that which is bad. We are not enjoining people to do that which is correct. We are not telling people to stay away from that which is bad. Al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. Also, we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us that one of the defining characteristics of our nation, of our ummah, is the fact that we enjoin that which is good and we take a stand against evil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas," that you are the best of nations raised for mankind. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then tells us, تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ. That number one, you enjoin that which is right, you forbid that which is wrong, and you believe in Allah. Now, if you really think about, subhanAllah, what makes us the best nation or the best of people, your natural answer would be, it is obviously our iman. It would be the fact that we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with tawheed. We believe in Allah, and we believe in His prophets, and we believe in His final prophet and messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That is what makes us the best. But in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, before mentioning our iman, Allah mentions that we enjoin that which is right, and we take a stand against that which is bad or evil. And then Allah says, وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ. And our scholars of tafsir, they say one of the reasons why Allah first mentioned al-amr bil-ma'ruf and nahy al-munkar before mentioning iman is to emphasize how important it is to stand up for that which is correct and to take a stand against that which is bad or evil, right? So that is how important it is, and that is why somebody who belittles this issue, the issue of enjoining that which is right, standing up for that which is right, or taking a stand against evil or bad, someone who is completely against this issue, they've gone in the other extreme, right? So we're going to talk about, what we should do before we, enjoin that which is good, before we do al-amr bil-ma'ruf, before we do al-nahy al-munkar. We're going to talk about this shortly, what we should do, and before we ever speak out, like, what should we do? Yes, but there are people who, because of, and a lot of times it's because people don't do al-amr bil-ma'ruf and nahy al-munkar properly, that people get averse to it, and they, they take the other extreme, which, no, we should never criticize anyone. We should never, say what is right and what is wrong. Just don't shake the boat. Don't rock the boat, right? And that is the other extreme. Obviously, it is part of our faith to stand up for that which is right. It is part of our faith to take a stand against evil. And subhanAllah, those people who say that we shouldn't do that, in actuality, it's not realistic for any society that there is no amr bil ma'ruf and nahy al munkar. I say this because evil and that which is bad, then the natural conclusion of that, the logical conclusion is that we would have a society of anarchy, right? So take it to its end, right? So you say like, oh, you can't call out something as being bad. You can't say this is wrong, and you can't say this is right, or you shouldn't say anything. Well, take it to its natural conclusion. What if somebody commits murder in society? Are we to say no, like, don't speak up, or don't judge this person, or whatever excuse you want to use? You just worship Allah on your own and don't worry about what other people are doing and all that. Obviously not, right? So if someone is doing something which is bad, yeah, in order for society to function properly, we have to say this is wrong. This is this is incorrect. This is injustice, and so on and so forth. Likewise, we encourage people to do good, right? And if we take that out of not only Islam, right? Yes, it's part of Islam, but even like the society as a whole, we have to encourage people to do good. Otherwise, society would really fall apart, and it would be chaos. So I wanted to make that absolutely clear before we get into the issue of what we should of the conditions that need to be met, what we should do before we ever command the good or enjoin that which is good and take a stand against evil. So that's the first thing, and I want to be very, very clear about that. I'm not here to sugarcoat this issue or not to rationalize the issue of standing up for good and taking a stand against evil. I think that is absolutely 100% part of our deen. However, with that being said, like everything in Islam, everything should be done according to the guidelines that are set by Islam. So, we talked about chaos, we talked about anarchy. Along with that, or we should say on the other hand, if we allow people to just go out and start calling people out and start, criticizing people and condemning people especially, then we go to the other extreme, right? And what's the other extreme? Well, that also leads to chaos because everyone, let's say they have their own opinion, they have their own point of view, they have their own feelings, and they start criticizing everybody based off of their own feelings. And once again, you have this anarchy, kind of like this wild, wild west, which is, subhanAllah, if you were to look at the online world today, that's kind of where we're at, right? So we're in a place where everyone has an opinion regarding everything, whether they have the knowledge of what they're talking about or not, whether they're right or wrong, all of the conditions that I'm going to mention, when you take those conditions out, right, when we don't think about those things before we call somebody out or before we, criticize someone, then once again, you have anarchy, lawlessness, right? Everybody's just taking matters into their own hands, and that is a problem as well. And that is actually the reason why I wanted to do this talk, because it has become a problem. So what are some of the things that, before we ever think about saying something or doing something, what are the conditions that need to be met? And this is, you can think of it almost as a checklist, right? Like these are the things that we need to check off before we open our mouth. And in our case, before we type online or before we type on our phone, these are the conditions that need to be met. These are the things that we need to do. Number one, first and the most important thing is we need to have the correct intention. So I want you to put yourself in the mindset, as I talk about these things, ask yourself, okay, I'm about to criticize someone, I'm about to say to someone, you know what, this is wrong. Don't do this and blah, 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 inkar. We're about to make inkar. First and foremost, before I ever do that, it is my responsibility to check my intention. And that is to ask myself the question, why am I speaking out? Why am I going to say something? Is my intention correct? And a correct intention is obviously to stand up for that which is right. Obviously, we do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We do it so that people are leaving evil and they're moving towards good, right? So those are good intentions. Wrong intentions. What are some wrong intentions? Well, let me give you an example of some wrong intentions. Sometimes it may be that we're doing it because we don't like the person. And our intention is just to expose someone's faults, or we can say to make them look bad. And we know that's actually highly problematic in our deen, to go out of our way to expose people's faults, and even like spying on people, and to go and investigating people's faults or their sins or their flaws. Islamically, that is highly problematic. I'll just share one hadith with you, very scary hadith, subhanAllah, hadith of Ibn Umar mentioned in At-Tirmidhi, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man tatabba'a awrata akhihi al-Muslim, tatabba'a Allahu awratah." The Prophet ﷺ said that whoever goes out and they seek to expose the faults or the flaws of their Muslim brother, then Allah will expose this person's faults, right? So put yourself in this position. I'll put myself in that position. If my intention is I just need to expose this person, I need to go find their problems, and we go do like investigation. Here's finding their sins, exposing their sins. If that is my intention, my sole intention is to expose someone's sins. My intention not to enjoin what is good. It is not to stand up for that which is correct. It is not to help the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My intention is what? It's something personal, right? I have something against this person. I want to expose their faults. Here the Prophet said, the one who goes out of their way, whoever seeks to expose the faults of their Muslim brother, Allah will expose this person's faults. And the Prophet said, وَمَنْ تَتَبَّعَ اللَّهُ عَوْرَتَهُ يَفْضَحُ. The Prophet said that, and the one who Allah exposes their faults, they will be ruined, meaning they will be humiliated. وَلَوْ كَانَ فِي جَوْفِ رَحْلِ. Even if this person is hiding in the depths of their house, they will be ruined. They will be why? Why will they be ruined? Why is Allah exposing someone's faults or flaws? Something that could ruin a person? Well, because nothing is hidden from Allah. Nothing, absolutely nothing is hidden from Allah. If we seek to expose someone's faults or flaws, we have limited knowledge. But when Allah exposes someone's flaws and someone's faults, then that person, subhanAllah, there's nothing hidden, right? Because Allah knows everything. And that is why one of the intentions, you may think of it as being a little bit, we think about ourselves, but we should think about ourselves. When we go out of our way to expose someone's flaws, someone's faults, someone's sins, remember, we all commit sins. We all have flaws. We all make mistakes. There's not a single person amongst us who doesn't have problems, doesn't commit sins, doesn't have flaws. If our flaws were exposed, how would it be? And let alone, may Allah protect us, if Allah were to expose our flaws. So that wrong intention. If our only thing is we want to expose someone's faults or flaws, that is highly, highly problematic. So, as I said, number one, maybe it is a personal thing. That's a problem. It may be that we have, like I said, I don't want to sugarcoat this, but it may be that we have an inferiority complex, and this is how we are dealing with it, almost as if it's a defense mechanism. So maybe we have low self-esteem, low self-worth, we don't feel good about ourselves, and how do we deal with it? We deal with it by putting other people down. And I've spoken about, self-worth and self-esteem, and I actually have a talk, a lecture on this on my channel, which you can check out, inshallah ta'ala. But one of the issues with having low self-esteem, low self-worth is people who have low self-esteem, low self-worth, they don't feel good about themselves. One of the defense mechanisms that they use is they try to put other people down to make themselves feel better. So sometimes when a person is doing al-amr bil-ma'ruf and nahy al-munkar, is simply to put somebody down to make themselves feel good. Sometimes we may be projecting. What is projecting? Well, projecting is when a person subconsciously denies their own problems, their own faults, and they ascribe them to other people, right? So projecting our faults on other people. And once again, this is related to having low self-esteem or low self-worth, but we feel we're not a good Muslim. And so what do? We call everybody else out who we feel is not a good Muslim, right? Why? Well, once again, we are projecting upon other people. Sometimes it may be an issue of jealousy. It may be an issue of hasad. We see somebody, and look, I'm not here to point fingers on any individual here. These are all things that we need to think about for ourselves, right? But I gotta keep it real, right? Like, these are real issues that, matters of the heart, especially, that nobody can solve these issues for us. Like, we gotta solve them for ourselves, for ourselves. Nobody can come to you and say, hey, you're jealous or whatever. Nobody knows what's in your heart. Nobody can come say it to me. Nobody knows what's in my heart. The only person who can solve our problems, our diseases of the heart, that person, that individual, is us. And that's why we need to know, we need to be aware of what's happening in our heart. So we need to have an honest discussion with ourselves. We need to be real with ourselves. Are we criticizing this person? Are we calling them out because we're jealous of them? because we have hasad. Maybe somebody is popular online. Maybe somebody has a following. Maybe somebody is praised, somebody is liked, and that makes us jealous, right? And how do we, deal with that jealousy? Well, we put that person down. This is a characteristic. This is a trait of Iblis. This is a characteristic of the shaitan, without a doubt. Especially those of you who've taken my seminar on the shaitan deception. One of the problems that the shaitan had was hasad, was this type of jealousy. And how did he deal with his jealousy? Well, he put Adam alayhi salam down. He belittled him. He said he refused. He refused to make sajda. He said, "I'm better than him," right? And arrogance is a natural next step, right? After jealousy becomes arrogant, and that's why you will find people who are very quick to criticize and condemn and to put people down and call people out. There will always be jealous. It can start with jealousy. It can start with hasad, but it's a very short road to arrogance. When a person becomes arrogant, they begin to see themselves above other people. They begin to see themselves as someone who can do no wrong, right? Someone who, subhanAllah, everything they say has to be correct. And if they themselves are criticized, they say, "How dare you? Who are you to say anything about me? I can be no wrong." And that is the definition of arrogance that the Prophet told us. What is arrogance? The Prophet said, "Batarul haqq wa ghamtun nas." Batarul haqq, to reject the truth. Why does someone reject the truth? Because they feel themselves as being in a place where no one can tell them what's up, right? No one can tell them what's right. Who are you to tell me? So they will reject that which is correct. They will reject the truth because of how high they hold themselves. Wa ghamtun nas, subhanallah, to look down upon people. Right? How many people who are in that position, who criticize and mock other people online and put people down, how many of these people, what are they doing? In actuality, they're mocking people, they're putting people down. Ghamtun nas, they're looking down upon people. This is the definition of arrogance that the Prophet gave us. And in the first part of this hadith, the Prophet said, a person who has even a small amount of arrogance will not enter paradise. And we know one of the things that keeps someone out of paradise is arrogance. Iblis, the shaitan himself, was kicked out of Jannah, paradise, for his arrogance. فَمَا يَكُونُ لَكَ أَن تَتَكَبَّرَ فِيهَا. Allah said, it is not for you to be arrogant here. Meaning, this is Jannah, get out. فَخْرُجْ, get out of here because you're arrogant. And arrogance was the downfall of the shaitan. And arrogance, may Allah protect us, we don't want it to be our downfall as well. So those are some of the wrong intentions. A good intention can be that we want to, as we said, stand up for that which is right, and take a stand against evil. But the following things that I'm about to mention now, the rest of the conditions, right? They will speak to our intention. If our intention is correct, we won't just speak. If our intention is correct, we will make sure we fulfill all of the conditions of enjoining that which is correct. Right? And so keep that in mind, inshallah ta'ala. That's why intention is the first thing. So, number one, intention. That's the first thing we check off of our list. Number two, or actually, intention we will make as its own thing. That before even the conditions, we will make it its own thing, right? So intention, because it should precede everything that we do, the correct intention, we're going to make its own thing. So let's go now. That has to be settled. And then number one, here's the first condition before we do al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar. Number one, when we are taking a stand against something, or we are calling for something, we must have knowledge of what we are speaking about, right? We must be knowledgeable of that matter. So let's say we are going to someone and we say, "Brother, this is haram, don't do this, this is wrong." Before we ever say that, we should have knowledge of what we're speaking about. We should have proper knowledge. Not, I heard someone say, or I read a fatwa, or I heard a fatwa online, and I just heard something. No, we need to have proper knowledge of what we are speaking about. Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, in his Sahih, he has a whole chapter titled Al-ilmu qabla al-qawli wal-amal, that knowledge comes before qawl, speech, and action. Knowledge comes before speak and action. We must have knowledge of what we are doing. So if someone doesn't really know this issue, and this happens a lot, subhanAllah, we don't even have proper knowledge of what we're talking about. We just heard someone say something, and subhanAllah, I've personally, myself, with my own ears, I've heard someone criticize somebody else, and when they themselves are questioned about that matter, like, hey, how do you know this is wrong? They say, well, I don't know, but I heard so-and-so say it, right? That is not enough. We need to have proper knowledge of what we are speaking about. So that's number one. If we don't have knowledge, don't speak, right? Don't, let alone, and it's one thing to do it for yourself. Like, I heard that this is haram, I won't do it. But if I'm going to go to other people and start saying this is haram, this is haram, this is haram, you need to know what you're talking about. You need to have knowledge of what you are talking about. So that's number one. I said intention comes before. So number one, having knowledge of basically what we are talking about. Number two, we have to make sure, we have to be sure of the facts, right? We have to make sure that what is happening is actually evil, is actually bad. So if we're speaking out against something, we need to be sure of the facts. So for example, before I go to someone and say, you know what, this thing you do is wrong, I need to make sure they actually did this thing. I need to make sure it's not hearsay. I need to make sure it's not gossip, that I heard someone say this. I need to make sure it's not conjecture, right? What does conjecture mean? Well, I need to make sure that I'm not connecting dots and assuming that this is what this person said, right? It's not based off of assumptions. It's not based off of hearsay. It is not conjecture. It needs to be fact. And if the facts are not correct, then we do not have the right, Islamically speaking, we do not have the right to go to someone and to criticize them for something that they may have done, they may not have done. We need to be 100% sure that what they are doing is actually, what we are criticizing is actually true, right? And once again, this, I could speak a lot about making assumptions. And we know that is highly problematic in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to not make assumptions, because some of assumptions is in ba'd dhanni ithm, that some of assumptions is sinfulness. Meaning, if we are making assumption, a part of that assumption will lead us into sin. And some scholars have said, when we begin to make assumptions about people, sooner or later we will end up in sin. Sooner or later we will be sinful if we are making assumptions about people. So not based off assumptions, it has to be actual facts, that we are not jumping to any conclusions. And also similar to point one is the fact that that we're not making assumptions about the deed that they did. As I said earlier in the first condition, having knowledge of what we're talking about what we're talking about. This is similar to that. That we don't just assume that this is a sin. We don't assume, and this happens a lot, subhanAllah. As I said earlier, people don't really know if this is actually right or wrong, but they think it's wrong, or sometimes it's their own feelings towards a matter. Right? It's not even that, subhanAllah, this is something that is Islamically they can prove. They themselves don't like it. And I'll give you an example. And this is a little bit of a personal example, but I will give it anyway. Sometimes people will come to me, and sometimes not even come to me, it's online or whatever. People say like, oh, your haircut is haram, right? You know what? This is haram. This thing, or sometimes you want different types of clothes or whatever it may be. This is wrong, brother. This is not Islamic, and so on and so forth. And if I were to ask them for evidence, they wouldn't have any. If I were to ask them to say, okay, show me, because my rule is always, look, if you are criticizing me on something which is from an Islamic perspective, I have no problem with it, right? I welcome criticism. If I'm doing something which is wrong Islamically, of course, I welcome you to come tell me that, you know what, this is Islamically wrong, because inshallah, I'm a human being as well, and I can make mistakes, and I may not have knowledge of something, and if you have knowledge of something Islamically that I'm doing which is wrong, ahlan wa sahlan, come tell me, no problem, I have no problem. But don't tell me of your own opinion. And a lot of times, that's what happens. A person, it's not that they have knowledge, it's just that they don't like it. And I've heard people say things like, oh, you're an Islamic scholar, right? You're a sheikh, and why would you dress like this? I'm sorry, homie, but that's your opinion of what you think a sheikh is supposed to look like. What you think an Islamic scholar is supposed to look like. That's your own preference. And our deen is not based off of your individual preferences. I'm sorry, not sorry. Our deen is not based off of your preferences. Our deen is based off of the Quran and the Sunnah. So if you can come to me and say to me, look, from the Quran or from the Sunnah, this is what is incorrect, no problem. Let's have this discussion. Let's have this talk. But as we said, you should know what you're talking about. Okay, so that's 1 and 2. Number 3 is that it cannot be a matter of disagreement. It cannot be a matter of a khilaf amongst the scholars. Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, if you see someone do an action regarding which there is a difference of opinion, then you should not stop them. Very plain, very clear. If it is a matter which the scholars have differed upon, then you should not stop them, right? Now, let's take a practical, real example here. If you're living in America, or I can say maybe living in North America, there's a debate that has been going on for years and years and years, and it keeps going on and keeps going on and there's no end to it, subhanAllah. Every time people keep debating this one matter. Is it permissible for Muslims in America to eat meat that is found in the grocery store, or is it permissible to eat, people all say, is it okay to have a burger at McDonald's, right? And, why do people keep discussing this? Because this is a matter of difference of opinion amongst the scholars. Some scholars say that the meat that is found in the grocery store, that is not dhabiha meat, right? That it is the meat that is slaughtered by Jews and Christians, and it is halal for us to eat meat that is slaughtered by Jews and Christians. That is the opinion of some of the scholars, and they consider that meat to be halal. And yet there are other scholars who say, no, it is not considered the meat of the Jews and Christians, and it has to be slaughtered with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on and so forth. Like, they have their reasoning, and I don't want to get into that debate right now. And please, in the Q&A, please don't ask me about halal meat. I'm trying to highlight a very important point here, and that point is it's a matter of difference of opinion. Now, valid difference of opinion, right? So there are credible scholars on one side and credible scholars on the other side as well. Is it a matter of difference of opinion? Yes, absolutely. Valid difference of opinion. And so in this case, it is not permissible to go to someone, you see your friend eating McDonald's one day and you go, brother, is that halal? That's not halal, brother. It's haram for you to eat that. That's wrong. And to, shame them for it or whatever, that is not okay, because it is a matter of difference of opinion. So in matters of difference of opinion, so that's also one thing we check. If it is a matter of difference of opinion, then no, we do not go and forbid someone or stop someone or call them out in any way. Mind you, what I'm talking about here is matters of valid difference of opinion. There are some matters which are, the difference of opinion is non-existent, meaning there's a perceived difference of opinion, and some matters where the difference of opinion is so minor that it wouldn't fall into this category, right? So I'll give an example, a little bit controversial, but it's okay. Hashtag real talk, gotta keep it real. The issue of musical instruments. Now, look, is music as a whole, is there khilaf? There's a lot of khilaf when it comes to certain details of music. Is it halal or is it permissible or not? But musical instruments, right, is one of those issues where we have the vast majority of scholars on one side, and we have a minority of scholars on the other side, right? Minority of scholars on the other side. So some of our scholars will say, no, this is not really a matter of difference of opinion, because you have such a minority of scholars on one side, and so that needs to be kept. So would this fall under this matter? My opinion, no, it doesn't. However, mind you here, this is not the only condition. Look at the rest of the conditions as well. None of these conditions should be taken on their own. We must look at the other conditions as well. When we bring on, this is the point here, when we bring all these conditions together, then we will have clarity of, is it okay for me to call someone out or not? So, as we said, what point was that? I think it was 3. I lost count. Okay, number 3, or 4, 3. That it cannot be a matter of disagreement. It cannot be a matter of difference of opinion amongst the scholars. Okay, so number 4, I believe that we should be aware of the levels of al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar. Now, what does that mean? The levels. What does it mean? It means the following. If we go to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, mentioned in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadih." That whoever amongst you sees something evil or bad, they see a munkar, which is the topic of our discussion today. Whoever amongst you sees a munkar, they should change it with their hands. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If they're not able to do it, then they should speak out against it. Meaning they should stop it with their tongue. This is what the Prophet is saying. Meaning they should speak out against it. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. And if they're not able to speak out against it, they should stop it with their heart, meaning hate it in their heart. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. And that is the weakest state of Iman. Now, this hadith, our scholars tell us that this tells us the levels of commanding the good and forbidding the evil, or enjoining the good and taking a stand against that which is evil. So, we need to know what we are capable of, right? We need to know that which we are capable of. We need to know what our ability is. In most cases, we don't have the ability to physically stop something. We don't have the ability, we don't have the authority, and let alone one of the conditions that are coming up, it will cause more problems than actually good. So our next responsibility is that we speak out against it. And if we may not have that capability, then we hate it in our heart. Also, from the capability here is what I spoke about in condition 1 and 2, and that is knowledge. We may not have knowledge, so we don't have the knowledge. We don't have enough knowledge of this matter to take a stand, to physically take a stand against it, and to verbally take a stand against it. In that, we know that our capability is in our heart, right? As I said, if you don't have knowledge of it, you can't speak out against it. You can't take a stand against it. But at that point, we resort to doing al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar in our heart. And yes, that is one of the ways in which we do enjoin that which is good and take a stand against evil, right? So to know and understand what your capability is, what are you capable of doing? And as we said, one of the factors here is knowledge. We may not have the knowledge to speak out against something, as we mentioned in point number 1. So at this point, we say, look, what is the level that you're at? Well, you're at the level where we say this is something that we make inkar of this matter in our heart. Number five, we need to weigh the harms and benefits. We need to, actually, before that, let's make that number 6. Number 5, we will say, is to start with the more important matters and then move on to the less important matters. So we see someone, and this is how this works. We see someone doing something which is bad, wrong, a sin. It is munkar, right? Something which is bad. And by the way, munkar is something which is bad, right? So it can be something which Allah has made haram. It can be something which Allah has made makruh, something which is disliked or inappropriate for a Muslim to do. All of that which is considered bad would be considered munkar, okay? So we see someone doing something which is munkar. We see them committing a sin. Our responsibility is that we first start with the most important matter, not the thing that is most visible to us. So, for example, we see someone, we see an individual who's drinking alcohol. Before we go to them and we say, brother, this is haram for you to drink alcohol, whatever. Or let's make it a little bit more realistic, right? We see somebody smoking pot. Pot, I think, has become a lot more common, especially amongst Muslims. May Allah protect us. May Allah protect us. May Allah forgive our sins, right? We see somebody smoking pot, and we say, brother, it's haram. This is an intoxicant. This is considered khamr in Islam. It's haram for you to smoke pot, blah, blah, blah. Now, there may be a more important issue here, and that is that the person doesn't have iman, right? It may be that this person, even though like you've seen them around or whatever, they have left Islam. Maybe their faith is gone, right? And so now when you start talking to them and you start addressing the issue of them smoking pot, Is that munkar? Yeah, it's munkar. But there's a bigger issue that needs to be addressed first. That is the issue of their faith. Because you can say whatever you want to someone. If they don't have iman, it won't make a difference. It won't make a difference to them whether this or anything else is haram or halal or whatever, because the iman is not there. So we have to be, and all of this, notice, subhanAllah, every one of these points means that we have to take our time and be very considerate before we ever open our mouth. And that's the problem. People don't want to hear that, right? They want to see something, say something. That's what it is, right? We want to immediately speak out against something. That's the problem. Every one of these conditions, what it is telling us is to first calm down. Take your time. Look at the facts, right? And so here, don't make a snap judgment about this individual. We have to know and understand, and we can say that is point 4A or 4B or whatever. Knowing the individual that you are speaking to, right? Knowing and understanding this person before you go make inkar, right? If you don't know this individual, how can you make inkar to them? Like, how can you understand who they are and what they're going through, right? We're talking about an individual here, an individual. And a side point that I'll mention, I was going to mention this at the end, but there is a difference between individuals and deeds. So we can make inkar upon a deed, right? We can say this, let's take a look at the same example, smoking pot. We can say smoking pot is haram, right? That was okay. But to go to this person and say, hey man, smoking pot is haram, you're sinful, what you're doing is wrong, and you're a bad Muslim, that's the individual. We're talking about the individual here. Speaking about a matter is another thing. And obviously having knowledge of that matter and all of that applies to that as well. But we're speaking about the individual here. So we have to differentiate. We have to be very careful that, and so condition 4A or 4B, as I said, knowing the individual that you are speaking to, that you are making inkar upon, that you're speaking about, you have to know and understand that person before we make inkar upon this person. So, starting with the more important matters, meaning if there's something more important that needs to be dealt with, we deal with that first before making inkar upon a lesser matter. Point number 5, and I believe I will end with this inshallah ta'ala, is weighing the harms and the benefits. Weighing the harms and the benefits, meaning what? Meaning we have to take a real look at this issue and say, look, and ask ourselves, is me speaking out, is the benefit that is coming from that, is it more than the harm that will come from me speaking out? And that's what it means when we say weighing the harms and benefits. Our scholars, they would say that if a person fears a greater harm, then the obligation of al-amr bil ma'ruf and nahy al-munkar, it drops. That if we fear that a bigger harm will come by speaking out or by doing something, then that obligation drops. And I want to give you an example from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. Authentic hadith mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, hadith of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, in which she says, and she's the narrator here, she says, I asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam if the hijr was part of the Kaaba or not. Now, what is the hijr? Those of you who have seen the Kaaba, those of you who have seen the Haram in Mecca, you may have noticed, so if you're looking if you're taking a top-down view of it, the Kaaba looks like a square, right? And next to the square, you will see, so let's see, this is the Kaaba, where there's a top-down view, okay? So this is the Kaaba here. Next to the Kaaba, there's like a U-shaped little structure, right? It's not very tall. I believe it's like 1 or 2 feet. It's not very tall. That area between the Kaaba and this U shape, that is known as the hijr. That's called the hijr, right? So Aisha, she says, is this area, basically like that, the top-down view, is this area inside here, is that considered part of the Kaaba or not? And the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, that is part of the Kaaba. Now, what does that mean? That means that the original structure of the Kaaba, the way it was built by Ibrahim alayhi salam, was that it wasn't square. It was actually, on one side, it had corners. On the other side, it was round, right? On the other side, it was round. Usually when I'm talking about this in my classes, I can draw it on the board. But basically, square, and the other side is round. So that the area in between, we're talking about the Kaaba and the Hijr, the area in between, that was part of the Kaaba. It was all one structure. It was all one structure. And that is why even now when we make tawaf, we don't go in between the Kaaba and the Hijr. We go around the Hijr, right? You probably noticed this. So she says, is that Hijr area, is it part of the Kaaba or not? The Prophet says, yes, it is part of the Kaaba. So she says, why, O Messenger of Allah, why didn't you rebuild the Kaaba? Why didn't you make the Kaaba the way it originally was, right? Meaning, if it's part of the Kaaba, then why not rebuild it to its original structure, including the Hijr into the Kaaba? The Prophet ﷺ, he replied, he said, "Oh Aisha, if your people were not so close to Jahiliyyah, meaning if they weren't so new in their Islam, and I did not think that their hearts would be agitated, then I would have definitely done that. And I would have brought the door to the ground." And that's the other thing. The door was basically, now the door is high, and you may have noticed, even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the door was high. Original structure, the door went all the way to the ground. The Prophet ﷺ said, I would have brought the door to the ground. So what is the point here? The Prophet ﷺ is saying, look, if I were to, and this is the Prophet ﷺ, so keep that in mind. He's saying, if I were to change the shape of the Kaaba, it's changed, right? These people are new in their Islam. All they know is this is how the Kaaba is supposed to look. They don't know that that's part of the original shape of the Kaaba. He said, if they weren't so new and I didn't know that they'd become so upset by this, I would have done so. Right? Meaning, what is correct here? What is correct is to return the Kaaba to its original shape. Right, that's what's correct. But did the Prophet go ahead and do that? No. Why? Because he weighed the harms and the benefits. He knew that the harms that would come from doing that. What are the harms? People would get upset. They would be annoyed at it. It would kind of like tear their reality, because in their reality, the Kaaba is supposed to look the way it already looks, right? And it would cause problems. Those problems are greater than the good that would come from returning the Kaaba to its original shape. So the Prophet did not do it, even though it's correct. The original shape, as the Prophet said, yes, it was part of the original shape. Here, the Prophet weighed the harms and benefits. And this is the Prophet ﷺ. Then what about us, right? So before we ever go to someone and say, brother, this is wrong, sister, this is wrong, this is haram, you should do blah, blah, blah. Before we ever call somebody out, we have to be very, very careful to weigh the harms and benefits. Because what are we talking about here? Sometimes it's the difference between immediate correction and lasting change, right? So you may see someone, and once again, let's go back to the example of somebody smoking pot. You may see somebody smoking pot, you go to them and say, brother, this is haram, and even like, how dare you smoke pot, whatever, immediate correction, versus everlasting change or lasting change. Lasting change, that means maybe you don't address the pot right now. Maybe you go and you have a conversation with a person, and you try to increase their iman, you try to bring them closer to Islam, and when their iman is high, that point you say, brother, smoking pot is haram, and that change would be a lasting change versus just immediately getting it off your chest and correcting that person. So these are some of the main conditions that need to be fulfilled before we enjoin that which is good and take a stand against evil. The second point here, as we said, number one, al-amr bil ma'ruf. That's the first first thing that we go to when we're calling somebody out, when we're canceling somebody. The other is advice. I'm only giving advice to that person. Didn't the Prophet said, ad-dinu nasiha, that this religion is sincere advice? Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I didn't realize we're going to go so long. So I will make this next part of this part 2, and I'll post a date and time, inshallah ta'ala. Part 2 of this talk will be the conditions that need to be met before we give advice to someone, right? So today we talked about al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy 'anil munkar. Next talk, part 2 of this talk, we're going to go into detail about how do you give advice. What are the conditions that need to be met before we give somebody advice? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.